I'm on mute. Good news. We've been able to get the stream up and underway. It's not quite in the same format as before, but welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to the last couple of minutes and the last couple of moments here in this qualifying session. 41 seconds left to go on the clock, and we do have a stream on our hands. At the moment, it's Victor Vidler who holds that pole position at 110.810. Ivan Skrig not too far behind, but Abe Gabadi improving, but invalidating. So he's not going to be able to jump ahead of our pole man. Ivan Skrig then, our reserve, looking to really establish himself at the top of this field. What can he do with one more corner to go? Is he able to beat this 110.810? He needs 600ths of a second to beat it. Ivan Skrig does not get close enough. Zalan Bieda then around the final corner. I know we've jumped into the action. We'll jump a little bit out. We're going to take a step back in a couple of moments' time. Igor Piasecki, so close to a Skrig, was better than his previous time. Zalan Bieda has gone close as well. Alex Santana even in the final sector as an improvement found from his teammate Victor Vidler. 110.730, and that's likely to take him ahead of anybody else even on this circuit. Alex Santana, final corner, he was improving, was the VNT man. It's a 110.955, so not going to be beating any of the pole times set so far. Victor Vidler still remains right on top. Dennis Langrock jumps his way up into 7th place, 110.934 for himself. Daniel Koya just outside of the 10s in an 11. Damien Curiel up to 9th. What can Casper Flash do as that's Wojtek Steg up to 7th place. Felipe Salsa up to 11th. Casper not quite able to displace him. Claudio Diaz not going to improve, nor is Ivan Skrig, nor is Igor Piasecki. And Zalan Bieda has invalidated. Alexei Cavero not going to improve. And Niall Gio just came across the line with an 11.323. That is going to be it for your qualifying session. I know it was short. I know it was sweet. But we are back, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Joseph Black, and I'll be leading the action, I think, throughout the course of this evening, now that we've made it back into the lobby in a little bit of a different scenario than before. And alongside me, of course, is going to be Max Ring.
Yes, hello everybody again. I'm sorry about what happened. For some reason, my Wi-Fi decided today, out of all days, it doesn't want to play ball. But yeah, that was a very frantic end to qualifying there. Victor Vidler picks up the first pole position of the season, but only just a 10th of a second separates him and Claudio Diaz. But just look how close that field is, Joseph. From Vidler all the way down to Lucas Basner, just under a 10th and a half separates 13 cars. That's how ridiculously close this field really is. It's going to be an interesting race ahead, of course. It's going to be very much about managing your tyre temperatures and managing your battery as well. Spain, a little bit tricky to manage the battery round because it's so naturally flat out. So for these drivers, potentially the likes of Boba, Cavero, or even Gio, who have qualified at the back, it could be quite difficult to make their way through the field.
Certainly can, and that's something that we've seen a number of times on this game, as that's going to be the end of our qualifying session. Of course, we only got to watch the end laps, but that gave us a decent indication of how quite tight this field is, and it's Victor Vidler who's able to extend over a 10th of a second to Claudio Diaz in 2nd place, Ivan Skrig in 3rd to make it a 2-3 for the home drivers. Igor Piasecki will come home in 4th, just ahead 7 thousandths ahead of Abe Gabadi in 5th. Zalan Bieda and Wojtek Steg, the other two drivers, within a 10th, or within 2 tenths of Victor Vidler. Dennis Langrock just outside, Alex Santana, another home driver, and Damien Curiel rounding out the top 10. Then Salsa, Flash, Beisner, Galonier, Koya, Manunza, Janssen, Cavero, Berber, and then Niall Gio to round out our 20-car field. And that's not the screen I wanted. That's also not the screen I wanted. We'll get third time lucky here this evening.
Oh, come on, Joseph.
There we go. That's the one I wanted. Of course, we're
go.
not going to be having our cameras on this evening because I haven't been able to set it up. I haven't had the time to, quite literally. I was not ready to set up the stream. I was not ready to do anything, and I've had to bare bones everything together, but we should be able to get racing. And just as soon as we go to that scene, just as soon as we cycle through everything, we're going to cycle back, because now we are going to be trackside for the first time in season number 42. Once the game decides to unpause itself, which I'm not sure why it's not doing right now. There we go. So it's, as I say, it's very patchwork, but yeah, we'll make it work. And of course, we get the most important part to you, which is the racing action. And well, speaking of, we're going to have Victor Vidler starting from pole position. Do you think he's one to look out for this year?
Oh, he certainly is. He's a man, especially in the recent months in different competitions. He's started to find that form of old, and he's really started to be able to put in some really strong performances. He's been able to take those pole positions and convert them straight into podium finishes, race victories. He's certainly a man on a mission. So if you want to put your money on anyone for the title, he is certainly one of them, just due to the raw speed he does have when he can put it all together.
Yeah, it's raw speed that can take you up to the top. But, of course, you need that consistency. You need everything to go your way in order to jump up to the top of the field. I've got my eyes on the McLaren drivers tonight. Of course, they both start in not a very great position, Berber especially on the back row of the field, but he's going to try and fight his way forward. Nel Gio will be alongside him after a disappointing qualifying performance. He'll be hoping to jump a bit better in the race because, of course, he was about 2/10 off of the rest of the field as they headed in. But we are going to head now to the 5 red lights for the first time in season 42. We've got drives on track and they are ready and the action is underway. An incredible launch from Victor Vidler from the front row of the grid. He's going to lead ahead of Claudio Diaz. Even Skrieg is going to try and challenge his fellow countryman down into the first corner. Is the V-Cub going to be close enough? He is. And Claudio Diaz just about remaining ahead. Ivan Skrieg and Ave Gabadi side by side. And Ave off the circuit, in fact. So he's going to drop down 3 wide just behind them. Steg, Piaszczewski and Bieda. 3 doesn't go, so they filter down into 2, and that's going to be Bieda off of the circuit to start us off. But Steg wins that little fight further down as well. Alex Santana, Casper Flash side by side for the final position in the top 10. Almost made 3 wide by Lucas Beisner. It is 3 wide just ahead of them, and it's getting very, very tight between them. Still 3 wide as they head down between the Ferrari, the Mercedes, and the Aston Martin. Flash, Saucer, and Beisner now, who decided to send it, and that's Beisner off of the circuit. And he has been the driver who's not been the beneficiary from that at all. In fact, he has very much been negatively affected by it. He drops near the back. Around the outside is Alex Santana. On the inside line is Dennis Langrock. And it's going to be Langrock who remains ahead, but he allows the door to remain open for Alex Santana on the inside line. And the final couple of corners will beckon for these two drivers. Very, very tight between them. A bit of contact, but it's going to be Alex Santana who has to yield the position in the end to Dennis Langrock. Victor Vidler leads.
Yeah, it's a very good start there from Victor Vidler from pole. Was able to hold on to that race lead and is now going to just try and push on as these next few laps continue to try break that DRS, of course, from Claudio Diaz, but it just doesn't seem like that will be too likely at the moment, with half a second separating the pair. Unfortunate for Lucas Beiser to drop down at those few places. Certainly could see him try have a charge back up through the field. To see Nel Gio's actually gained up a few places as well, past his teammate and the 2 McLarens up into 17th place. And then Damien Curiel, who's making his debut, is in 10th. And if we look at the tyres, thank you, Joseph, we see everybody on the mediums except for Steg on the softs. That's a road call there from the Red Bull driver. And Cavero and Boba both on the hard compounder tyres. So everyone looking to go on the same strategy, but a few. And for Wojtek Steg, this is a very aggressive opening stint from the Red Bull.
He certainly is. He's going to try and start his season off on a high as Tristan Janssen through on Berber, and Berber's going to remain on the inside. Of course, he's one of only 2 drivers on the hard compound tyres. It's both of the McLarens who will be taking those tyres at the start of this race, and it's only the 2 McLarens, so they will be slow at the start, but they will be able to work their way into this race as they continue on lap number 3. So we are 1/11th through the way of this race, and it seems to be hotting up right at the very back of the field. A little bit further up, though, Damien Curiel getting close to Alex Santana, but not getting through on the Williams just yet. Wojtek Steg needs to take advantage of these tyres in the first 5 laps. Otherwise, he's going to really, really suffer later on. He has gained 2 places off at the start, so has been successful. And if he's able to continue this one on, then he'll be in a great place. But he really needs to keep that one consistent. He's 8/10 now ahead of Igor Piaszczewski, who in himself is 8/10 ahead of Alan Bieda. And once you've lost the DRS here around Barcelona, that could be curtains.
Yeah, it certainly could be, of course, with having the 2 DRS zones and such a long one down that main straight. It's extremely difficult because you lose a good half a second down that main straight to everybody around you. So If you once you lose that DRS, it is certainly, unless there's a safety car, game over in a sense. So you got to time your moves perfectly, because if you go a little bit too robust and you end up losing the time to the cars in front. So if you're in the likes of Wojtek Steg's shoes here and you go too aggressive against Gabadi and Iskrig goes off down the road, that's the top 3 gone. They won't be seen again unless there's a safety car. So yeah, for these drivers, they've got to be careful on how they make their moves and when they make their moves, because if they drop that DRS window, it could certainly be game over of trying to find any way up through the field. And of course, at the minute, they are all still within DRS range. No one really teetering on edge. Actually say that Bieda and PSGL both quite risky with how far back they are to the cars in front, as Lucas Baisner trying to make amends after that early lap 1 incident. Now behind Daniel Koya and is about 2 tenths behind and could have a run here, Joseph, into turn 10.
Certainly could. Had a run into turn number 3 to start this lap off, but it doesn't look like he's going to be close enough. He got to within half a tenth of a second, but now is about 4 tenths back. It's the dirty air effect, which is quite prevalent around this circuit. And that is really what's put pay to Lucas Baisner's attack at the moment, as we've had our first break of DRS, and it'll be for 13th place. Jeremy Galonier, 1.1 in behind Felipe Sousa, so that's not ideal for him, as Ivan Iskrig sets the fastest lap from 3rd place, and Dennis Langrock snatches it right back off him. So everybody in this field is very, very quick, as something's happened to Baisner as soon as we cut away. Looks like he's had a bit of a slide out of the final corner, and his day just goes from bad to worse.
Yeah, Lucas Baisner. Oh, he's also picked up a bit of front wing damage as well. Potentially just pushing too hard in that dirty air. Has gone off the road into the gravel, or in that dirty air as well, has potentially picked up some tyres overheating. So, of course, that's something these drivers really do need to look out for, especially through those traction points. A lot of them around this circuit is to manage those rear tyres. If they start to overheat slightly, you will start to just hemorrhage so much time to the competitors around you. So it's all about just maintaining your tyres nicely alongside that battery. And of course, track limits as well. Easy to pick up track limits here in Spain, especially at the likes of turn 9. And also the final corner as well. So these drivers, they need to be on their A game, which they surely will be for the opening round of the season. They're fresh, they're prepared, and they're ready for battle. And it certainly does seem that Victor Vidler is doing everything he can at the front to maintain that gap to around about half a second by the time we reach that main straight, as Galonier actually comes into pit lane.
Yeah, Jeremy Galonier going very early here off of a set of the mediums, and it's interesting to see, will he have damage? Is that why he's had that break? And is that why he's decided to come into the pits? As yeah, there we go, that'll be a brand new front wing on the V-Cub car, and Lucas Baisner exactly the same. They both come in, they're both making the switch, and they will be getting brand new front wings on at the start of this race, hoping that something goes wrong further up and they'll be able to cut their way in. Welcome to those of you in the chat as well. Ishmael Fassi, Alvaro Caraton watching the first stream of the season, and it's great to have you. We have, well, exactly 67 people watching the stream right now according to the statistics, and so nobody's allowed to leave now, nobody's allowed to join either. We're only allowed to have specifically that amount of people watching on this stream. But at the moment we are on lap 6, we're about to go on to lap number 7, so that's a very fitting time to be pointing that one out. And Victor Vidler still holds that lead over Claudio Diaz, but Diaz looks quicker. Iskrig looks even quicker than both of them. Ave Gabadi's fighting to keep up.
Yeah, Gabadi really starting to struggle now to just keep up with the pace of this top 3. They're the quickest, of course, in that qualifying session, these 3, by a bit of a margin compared to the rest of the field, especially Vidler being that 10th clear in qualifying of Diaz. And they've just been able to convert that into this opening 7 laps of the race. But also for Gabadi, it could be a case of he's managing his tyres to begin with, just easing them into the stint, and by the time we reach that pit window, he could be all over the back of Diaz and Iskrig. We'll just have to wait and see how this all plays out. Steg to get those softs 7 laps into this race is actually quite surprising, because tyre wear is quite high, not only around this circuit but on the game itself as well. So for Wojtek Steg to still have some competitive pace on that tyre at the moment is doing a fantastic job, and is able to stick with Ave Gabadi at the moment and stay still around about half a second clear of Igor Piaszewski as well. So he's not under too much pressure, not applying too much pressure either to Gobadi. So will Steg come into pit lane this time around, as we really just keep going on until the wheels fall off the wagon? Certainly seems like the latter option there, is he's still pushing on, but those tyres are certainly slowly starting to fall off.
Yeah, they do seem to be, and when we went on board there was a few flecks, a few breaks in the tyres, and the more he's going to continue on, the worse that those tyres are going to get. We're going to get our first overtake on track for a while, and that's because of that gap that Jeremy Colonier had to the car ahead. Andrea Manunza has been able to get through on Daniel Coyer for 13th place, and that seems to be the position they will be fighting for all race long. 12th and up will be remaining in the DRS for as long as they possibly can, although everybody's sort of filtered out to about 7/10 of a second. 5 to 7/10 of a second is the gap between most of these drivers, and we will see where they are stacking up at the end of this race. Of course, it's been about 5/10 between the top two. It's been about 5/10 between third and second for a while now, and it only looks set to continue between them as Ivana Skrieg, poor exit, has dropped him back to about 8/10 of a second, in fact, and starts to sort of push towards the clutches of Ave Gabadi, and hopefully he'll be able to pull free, but Ave will be hoping that he'll be able to fight his way back in. But Wojtek Steg, trying to make the most of these tyres, has been able to remain within range of Ave Gabadi. Is he going to be boxing on lap 8 of this race? No, he continues on. So he's managing those tyres incredibly here to even get them to this point, let alone to be keeping pace and keeping up with the rest of the field, as the pit window will be coming up very soon, even for the medium tyre runners. So it was worth that gamble, worth going on to a very good start for himself, and he's going to hope to continue this one through as they head on throughout the rest of this race. To be fair, the tyre wear difference between the two tyres isn't too bad, but yeah, it's kind of going to be around lap 11, lap 10, something like that, as Victor Vidler has been overtaken in the meantime. DRS has aided Claudio Diaz in taking the lead of the race.
Yeah, there we go. Diaz makes his way through on Victor Vidler. And the Williams finally, for the first time this evening, relinquishes that race lead. And for Diaz, he's actually starting to break away a little bit as well. Of course, Vidler will have to just quickly adapt to driving in that dirty air. Hasn't done so all evening long. So he's just got to maybe be a little bit more cautious through the likes of turn 9 in the final corner, just to see that front end wash out due to that lack of aerodynamic grip. He'll be getting behind that V-carb. That gap around about half a second now between the pair. Diaz has pounced. He has gone for that move now. Will Victor Vidler fight back, or is he now just happy to sit behind to save some tyres and also to save some battery as well? It looks like it is going to be just that option, to save the battery, save the tyres, and push on a little bit later on. I think the best driver at the moment in this position here, Joseph, is potentially Ivan as well, down in third place. He's just watching these two drain their battery, drain their tyres ever so slightly with their small battle they had. And for him, he can just do what he likes, at least stick with the pace, and come the end of the stint, he's not had to push or defend from anybody. He might have the best tyres of the lot and make up both places.
He very well might do. We will, of course, as I say many a time, and I'll say it once again, we will have to wait and see what is going to happen with these tyres and with these drivers in this stint. But at the moment, it does look like a very good start for the top couple, especially Ivana Skrieg, 8/10 back now from them, as it looks like Diaz and Vidler are sort of trying to create their own fight. Ivana Skrieg's trying to fight his way back into this one now, as he is on the back foot. He has been for a couple of laps. Bit of a slide from Claudio Diaz out of the penultimate corner, out of the penultimate braking zone, or even the final braking zone, in fact. And that has opened the door for Victor Vidler to try and gain down the straight with DRS. He's going to be pulling to the inside. Diaz is going to try and defend it. There's not much that he's going to be able to do to restrict the VNT man from going back ahead, and he's through. And crucially, Wojtek Steg has lost DRS on Ave Gabadi. He had it down that straight. He will no longer have it unless Igor Piaszewski is able to go through and pick it back up, because I don't think Wojtek's tyres are going to be lasting any longer. I think we'll be seeing the Red Bull into the pits this lap.
Yeah, we might certainly be, as Steg is really starting to struggle now. I wouldn't be surprised if those tyres are around about 70 to 80% at this stage. It's been a very heroic stint here from Wojtek Steg on those softs. 11 laps done on them, of course. So if he's surely got to come into pit lane now, he's lost that DRS. He's got to hope that PSGL doesn't go for the move here into turn 10. It doesn't seem so. So the Red Bull is able just to hold on to that pace. And the undercut attempt now potentially on Gabadi and Co in front could be in full swing here for Wojtek Steg. A little bit of a wobble out of turn 12. And we actually also see Claudio Diaz into pit lane. So that just shows how well Steg has done on this tyre, is the fact he's been on the softs and he's boxing around the same time as most of the medium runners as they all start to trickle into pit lane.
Certainly is, and that's not a terrible first stint by any stretch of the imagination. It's an undercut from a lot of the medium runners. I think that my projected lap at least was that they were going to come in on lap 12 or lap number 13, so it's going to be a little bit early for a lot of them, but Diaz and Escrig hoping to get track position over on Victor Vidler and hoping to go ahead. The two AMR drivers need to work together now in case Victor Vidler does dive in next lap, and well, it's all Agerman's strategies taking them hopefully to the very top of this field. The gap between himself, Claudio Diaz and Tristan Janssen at the moment, 8.8 seconds, and that's going to be just outside of the top 10. Daniel Coy, his gap to Casper Flash is 4.1. Abe Gabadi just outside of the DRS of Victor Vidler, in fact, so he's been able to have the pace over the last lap that Victor may well have been struggling with. And then of course the drivers between Gabadi and Langrock came into the pits, which is why the gap now between two is 3 seconds and climbing. Are we going to be seeing the top two into the pit lane on this occasion? Victor Vidler shapes 2 and does not come in. Neither of the drivers do come in. No, Victor Vidler does come in. He does actually turn in very late, but he does make it in, and Abe Gabadi continues on. Abe taking this one very, very long, and it looks like it'll only be him and the Ferraris staying out. No, Niall Guillot is going to stay out and take P2 on track for the time being, but it might not be P2 for very long as Berber and Alexi Cavero are closing in. It'll be Alexi first on the inside of Guillot into turn 1 and makes the move stick on the Haas driver.
Yeah, nicely done there from Cavero to get past Gio there. Of course, these guys staying out long. They're at the back of the field, and the two McLarens, of course, on the hard compounded tyres, so they'll certainly have been looking to go longer anyway. Diaz has been able to get that undercut there on Victor Vidler. Skrieg and Steg are... sorry, no, Gabadi's not come in yet. I was going to say out well clear of Gabadi, but no, he has not come in to the pit lane. But for Diaz, that's a nice undercut. It's got him back into that net race lead. So that's something he can now push on to and work to for the remainder of this race. But it'll be interesting to see where Gabadi comes out here. Joseph, of course, has stayed out those extra 2 laps. It seems that undercut is very handy indeed. So he could potentially come out behind Igor Piaszewski, and in the worst case, potentially behind Dennis Lamrock as well. This could be some really, really tense moments here for Abe Gabadi. Yes, he might have... He's staying out for an extra lap. Yes, he might have that tyre deficit near the end of the race, but he's going to have quite a few cars to get by the time we reach those latter stages of the Grand Prix.
It's looking like Abe Gabadi and Niall Guillot are going to try and make this very, very long of a first stint so they can have a bit of tyre left in themselves for the last stint itself. But I don't know whether that's going to pay off for them, as Claudio Diaz is up at the telemetry on the screen, excuse me for that one, but Dennis Langrock through on Igor Piaszewski. It's hard because the T is right below the 5 and the 6. So if I try and switch to the drivers in 5th and 6th, there's always the risk of that if I'm being a little bit too lazy. Dennis Langrock now into 10th place, 1.6, the gap between himself and Wojtek Steg. Steg sort of running his own race here. That's sort of the biggest gap you'll see at this level with drivers ahead and drivers behind. It's 1.5 between Steg and Langrock, and that's very much being in your own world, being in no man's land for the Czech driver at the moment, and he'll be hoping to hopefully get back ahead, get back caught up with Skrieg so he can relight his fight for the lead of the race, which is currently held by Claudio Diaz. 1.2 off the back of that pack is Steg, and the Dennis Langrock another 1.8, 1.9 behind. Abe Gabadi does dive into the pit lane on lap number 14. I'm sure that Niall Guillot is going to be following him because those tyres will be screaming out, and you can see actually how worn they are. Just bitty. They look bitty is the way I would describe it, as the two hard runners continue on, and Tristan Janssen as well. Is he going to come in? No, indeed he is. So the two Haas drivers are double stacking. Claudio Diaz then will take the lead of the race back. Victor Vidler will take 2nd place back. He'll be wanting 1st place back very soon though. Will he go for it into turn number 1? He's going to be close. He's going to shape for it. But all that was just trying to force a mistake out of the car ahead.
It certainly was indeed. And Diaz not cracking under that pressure just yet, as Abe Gabadi came out just behind Wojtek Steg. So actually in a better position than I thought he would be. but still have 4 cars to try and overtake come the end of this race. And of course on the hard compound tyres are the likes of Diaz, Fiddler and Eskrig. So there's a yellow flag in sector 3 actually, so that's Lucas Baisner who's retired from the session. When it rains, it pours for the Mercedes driver here this evening. It has just been an absolutely horrid opening around to the season there for Lucas Baisner. Unfortunately, he is our first retirement of the season to boot as well. Diaz, of course, still holding on to this race lead as we make our way through turn 10 and up into 12. Of course, an agonisingly long corner to slowly get your foot back down and make sure you don't loop the rear end round as Tristan Janssen now comes into pit lane. And you surely think this time around, Joseph, Victor Vidler's going to get that move done. There's a tenth and a half between them, and he's already pulled to the right-hand side.
Yeah, he already has, and he's already pulled ahead, just pulling down towards the outside line into the first corner. We are having a fight for the lead of the race, though, Alexi Cavero and Berber. I know this is not the official lead of the race, this is the unofficial one, but they are still trying to fight, and in fact, it looks like Berber made a rash move and allowed Alexi Cavero to go back through. Never mind, somebody's straight-lined. That's going to be Berber, who's gone straight on. I think he's had some sort of technical issue, which is why he let them through, and that is very unfortunate for Berber. That is a great sight to see at the start of the race. Berber is now left and retired from the session, so I think that's just an internet issue for the FBR man, who becomes the second retirement this evening.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate there for Berber. Just a wheel disconnect, I think, just happened there, and it sent him straight on into that wall. So for Cavero, he hasn't got his teammate to help DRS off one another either. He can now just have to do this one alone. And Victor Fiddler is now 2.4 seconds behind Cavero. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the McLaren driver who slides his rear end all the way out through turn 12, getting really skatey with that rear end and goes really wide as well through the final corner. He's bleeding so much time to Victor Fiddler here, not got the pace at all here in Spain. And for Victor Fiddler, I think he's just going to be able to hold on to that race lead, or is he? There was a move potentially looming there from Claudio Diaz, and it is a move from Claudio Diaz as he now looks to the outside through turn 2, and he gets the move done nicely on the brakes. And that was Diaz up into the net race lead once more. And that could have came at the perfect time here, Joseph, because if he catches up to Cavero at the right moment, is able to overtake, and Fiddler gets held up slightly, he could see himself maybe break DRS from the Williams driver.
He's almost into that DRS already of Alexi Cavero. Indeed, he will be at the next detection zone. So Claudio Diaz has nailed this one here, and he'll be able to make his way through. By the way, a bit more information on Berber. His engineer has just messaged me saying brake pedal exploded and no more context. So that's exactly what's happened to our FVR driver at the start of the season. Very, very unfortunate, because of course he would have been fighting for the race quote-unquote lead, as it were. I know they're out of sync with the rest of the field, but still have been on for a decent position. But this is going to be the actual fight for the race lead now. It's Alexi Cavero having to go it alone without his teammate, and you've got Claudio Diaz and Victor Vidler waiting in the wings, and Diaz is going to have the DRS down towards turn number 1. The 47 is going to pull to the inside line, is going to make his way through with ease. Is Vidler going to fight his way through as well? He's going to have a look. He's going to be on the inside line. This is going to be a bit tighter, but he does move across before that first corner, and he moves his way up as Wojtek Steg is just about clinging onto the DRS of Ivan Skrig, and Skrig himself, he's managed to get the underline on Alexi Cavero, so a bit more grip in those tyres for that kick Sauber, and he's managed to make his way through up into third place. Those hards very much paying off for him at this point, and just a reminder that Alexi Cavero has now done 17 laps on that one set of white wall tyres. Everybody else has done about 5 or 6. 17 is what he's taken it to. As Wojtek Steg, the latest to try and get through, and Cavero looks like he's putting up a bit more of a defence for this one. Steg trying to find his way through, but I'm sure he'll get through with that DRS.
Yeah, he's going to look for it now. To the outside he will go, but he'll probably get it done before the braking zone, and he does. Cavero just lets him through and slots back into the train. Next on the list will be Ave Gabadi, who looks to the outside now through turn 12. Easier to just drop the rear end ever so slightly and run a little bit wide as well. But he gets through nicely too and is able to stick with Wojtek Steg. Again, wide through the penultimate corner there from Cavero. That's held up Langrock, but he's still going to have DRS and also the slipstream as well to keep him in tow with Ave Gabadi, as he's going to look to the inside now is the Mercedes man. He's going to surely see himself through. Cavero doesn't fight it at all, and through goes Dennis Langrock, and Pajeski will now also follow suit. Cavero falling like a stone at the moment on those now 18-lap-old hard compounder tyres. So there's Pszczewski to the inside line. He sees himself through. And also to note as well here, Joseph, the McLaren driver does have a bit of front wing end plate damage. His right front end plate has unfortunately come off. That might have been on the opening tour, and that could also explain the lack of pace he's showing.
Yeah, it may well have been because of that. It may well have been as well because of the fact that his teammate, of course, they came together, Berber and Alexi Cavero, but they're both one's out of the race, one's got end plate damage. So either way, it's not going to be an ideal start to the season for the two McLaren drivers. Victor Vidler 3/10 off the back of Claudio Diaz, looking to get through very, very soon. Casper Flash as well, the latest move on Felipe Sousa into the final couple of corners, into sector 3 on this circuit. We will tick over 220 of 33 with Claudio Diaz 5/10, now 4/10 ahead of Victor Vidler, and the DRS will be open for the Williams to see if he can make his way back through. Look how much he's gaining with said DRS as he gets down to the first corner, but he's not quite close enough. He needs probably to be a 10th closer as, well, Alex Santana the latest to make a move on Alexi Cavero, but I'd say that you probably need to be about 4/10 back to be with any shot of making an overtake into turn 1.
Yeah, you certainly do. You got to be really right on the gearbox, in a sense, out of the final corner if you want any opportunity with the DRS, even with the car in front having the DRS as well to get that move done. And, of course, here for Victor Vidler, he's, of course, coming up against a car that doesn't have DRS, so he has that liberty of being a little bit further back because he'll have that a little bit more straight line speed compared to the V-car. So open up the DRS now down between turns 9 and 10. Won't go for it here. We'll just get instantly taken back by the V-car if we went for the move there. But as we now head up into, of course, turn 12, and then, of course, it'll be through 13 and 14. Needs a good run now through these final two corners if he wants any chance of retaking that race leader, or is he just happy to sit behind for now? It'll be DRS open as East Creek is slowly dropping back. That gap now nearly 7/10 of a second between second place Vidler and third place East Creek. And here comes Vidler to the inside line with the DRS. Gets it done nice and easily. Gets the car stopped as well. And he's back up into that race lead. I think this one here, Joseph, as it currently stands, is certainly between Vidler and Diaz for that race victory.
Certainly is, unless Abe Gabadi can get a move on, because Ivan Skrieg has not quite been close enough all race long. Wojtek Steg has had very, very good pace, in fact, as well, but his tyres are, of course, 1 lap older than the majority of these drivers in this pack. He was able to take those softs into the very late stage of that stint, though. So maybe it could be the case that Wojtek Steg actually has a very, very good tyre condition on his hands. He might be able to hold on to the position and maybe make his way forward, because, of course, the better tyre management you are, the more tyre you're going to have at the end of the race left. And that's what Wojtek Steg, I'd imagine, is banking on right now, as we are seeing a couple of potential moves being shaped up. I know that Casper Flash and Felipe Sousa have been fighting very hard in the opening stages or the last few laps, but he's not been able to get his way through, has Sousa. He's had to be frustrated in behind Casper Flash for yet another corner. We cut down to what will be lap number 22, and Victor Vidler remains in the lead of this one. Claudio Diaz remains in second place. We're seeing all of the drivers remaining pretty much exactly where they were, except Claudio Diaz, closer than ever to Victor Vidler. He seems to have the better straight line speed.
Yeah, he certainly does seem to have the better straight line speed. Does Victor Vidler, as Diaz is just not able to close up with that DRS down the main straight. So we're going to have to see if Vidler can use that to his advantage now, with not too long left in this race. 12 laps to go. As for Victor Vidler, he is now just having to try and pull away through this middle sector, make sure that gap stays about 6/10 of a second by the time we reach that first DRS zone we're about to reach now, and then get a good run through turns 11, 12 and 13. So the gap coming into the final corner is still around about half a second, and then Diaz won't be able to get that move done into the first corner. It goes a little bit wider, does Diaz, compared to Vidler through 10. As we make our way through 12, it does seem that Vidler does get a good launch out of there, but Diaz got a bit of a better one. As we now head through the penultimate two corners, that dirty air really affecting Claudio Diaz, and Victor Vidler is able to extend that gap to nearly 7/10 of a second.
Certainly is big gap built up by Victor Vidler, and it could be the moment that this race switches into the Williams' favour once again. Ivan Skrieg 7/10 off the back of these two, so he's not going to be in it anytime soon, as the top 7 are split more than they ever have been before. They're split certainly more than they have been over the last few laps since the start of this stint, and well, Claudio Diaz and Victor Villa still remaining in, but everybody's 7 or 8 tenths back, and everyone's still, to be fair, in the DRS, down to Daniel Coyer in 14th place, Alexi Cavero with the fastest lap of the race, but he's of course on a different strategy to everybody else, and I don't think this one's going to pay off, being 19.7 seconds off of the rest of the grid. Had he come in a couple of laps earlier, he might have been able to give it a decent go, but now that he's come into the pits and come back out so much further back than everybody else, then I think it's going to be a struggle for him to fight his way through. The two Haas drivers will be the first ones up on his list. 19.2 seconds, of course, as I say, the gap, and Tristan Janssen just out of the DRS of his own teammate Niall Gio, 2.3 off the back of Daniel Coyer, so it's a learning experience for those two. Niall, of course, especially, he's just jumped into F3 for the first time, and he's trying to make this one work. Heading on to lap number 24 then, and it's going to be Vidler leading Claudio Diaz by 5 tenths down to 4 tenths, and this is going to be a rinse and repeat for these two, I think, as they head towards the latter stages of this Grand Prix. Only 10 laps to go.
Yeah, only 10 laps to go in this one. Now we are starting to get into the closest stages of this race. It's all about management now for these drivers, just to see how they now progress through the latter stages of this race. For Claudio Diaz, he's currently looking in the hot seat. He's in that position you want to be heading on to a final stint into this race, and that is, of course, being in second place. Especially when you hit that final lap, you have the DRS, you have that opportunity to get the move done. But for Victor Vidler, he has that relief of being the one in the lead. He knows he can defend his position, and he will try and take it all the way to the death. But we'll have to see how these drivers manage their tyres, manage their battery as well, and will we see any swaps for position from either one of them? Will one go a little bit defensive, one go attacking in these final stages, or could we see somebody else potentially put their hand in for a potential race victory? The likes of Ivan Iskrig or even a Wojtek Steg could see themselves put their hand in the pot. But for Diaz, no move being made just yet. He seems quite content at the minute, doesn't he, Joseph, to sit behind, does the V-carb against the Williams driver. And for Diaz, he's just happy to be all over the gearbox of the Williams driver, probably so he could save his battery.
Yeah, probably so he could save his battery indeed, and they can make a charge at the late stages of the race, but both of them will want to back off to make a charge in those late stages, because that's just the way that it goes. Everybody will be on a ready to fight similarly because of how closely knit this field is, and Vidler and Diaz at the moment are very much in contention for this race lead, as Grieg's not been able to get close enough regardless of whether he pushes or holds back. I think at the moment he's in a pushing stage because he's breaking through Wojtek Steg down the straights, but he's not quite pushing hard enough to get within range of the VNT driver at the front and his AMR teammate in second place. But of course, if they are able to get this one over the line, as they will start to scrap later on in this race, if they are able to get this one over the line, then it'll be a very, very, very good one to see. 8 laps to go as they touch the beam, as they cross the beam. And Claudio Diaz, well, he's not too far off at the moment. He's just using that DRS to draw him along. And is he going to go for a move into this first corner? No, I think he's happy to sit there and wait for potentially even just the final lap.
Yeah, I think he certainly is, just waiting for those final few laps to try and get that move done onto Victor Vidler, as of course he now makes his way through turn number 4. He's still going to be careful though that he is waiting this long, but if he makes a slight error, Iskrig and Steg will be waiting in the wings to try and get a move done. As you can see on his steering wheel there, he's nearly got a full tank of battery. It'll be interesting to know how much Victor Vidler has left in the tank. But he has pulled away over the course of this lap, has the Williams driver, of course, just extending further and further clear for now. And then with the DRS, Diaz will catch back up. But it's the final 2 corners where Vidler's just so strong with that clean air. He can seem to gain about 1.5 to 2 tenths over Claudio Diaz, just due to how much washing out the V-carb has compared to the Williams car. Maybe not so much gain this time around, he's starting to adapt to it, but he can carry so much more speed for those final 2 corners from Vidler, and Diaz, I don't think will go for it again.
He got very closely locked up into the first corner. So Claudio Diaz is starting to try and push Victor Vidler on here and starting to try and make him make moves. Daniel Coyer getting through on Andrea Manunza, who gets onto the escape road. Something's happened to the kick Sauber, which means that he is not quite in position as well as he would have liked to be. Daniel Coyer 1.1 off the back of Felipe Sausas has to push on this lap to remain in contention. But we are seeing these drivers getting very, very tetchy towards the end of this race. Mistakes coming out, of course, Andrea Manunza just going off of the circuit in his fight with Daniel Coyer, which means that he's not able to hold the candle to the Red Bull in this stint anymore. 7 laps to go. It will be 6 as we cross the beam, and we are getting closer and closer and closer to the very end of this Grand Prix, and it's been a good one to kick off the season. All nice and clean, and well, it's been mostly nice and clean apart from Berber's brake pedal exploding, which sent him off of the circuit. But other than that, everybody's been absolutely fine. Everybody has been able to keep it nice and clean and in the straight and narrow. And well, of course, we are getting towards the end of our first round. We have many rounds to go, but the fight for the race lead in round number 1 is on. Claudio Diaz braking later, locking up, getting through on Victor Vidler. He's not going to help himself at all with that flat spot on his tyres.
No, he certainly is not, as of course Diaz taking that race lead. He's now the one leading the pace, and look at East Creek, he's slowly closing in as well, so Ivan could still be within a good shout of this one. As look how much Diaz is really backing up this train. Vidler nearly into the back of the V-carb, and the kick Sauber is all over the back now of the Williams as we make our way through turns 7 and 8. And for Victor Vidler, he's gone from being in that clean air out in front to potentially having to attack, and also look in his mirrors at the same time, because Ivan Eastcreek is all over the back of him now as we make our way through the left-hander of 10. You can see Diaz in that first sector was really just backing up Vidler. But I think that might have cost him dearly as well in the same sense, because look how close Vidler is to the back of Diaz still. He's not been able to pull away from the Williams driver. And we might see Victor Vidler now go for that move down the main straight. A breaker toe from Claudio Diaz. He hugs that inside line all the way down the main straight. But Vidler will use the battery, will use the DRS to now swoop around the outside line if he dares. Will be the inside for turn 2. There's contact between the pair as we now make our way through turn 3. It's Diaz back to the inside line, and surely this time around to be able to pull clear, but no, still side by side into 4, and this time around Vidler has to cede the position. But heading down into 5, another late braking opportunity could see Vidler go for the lunge, and no, he does not. Brilliant racing between the pair, utmost racing respect, and Diaz, just by the skin of his teeth, carries on to hold the position.
Certainly does, holds on to that position, but this is no love lost between these two. They keep on fighting as Casper Flash has started to drop down the order. Something's happened to the Aston Martin, which is not very ideal, and that's what's happened to him while he's off the circuit. He and Felipe Sousa are both off of the track, and there is contact, and there is a penalty applied to Felipe Sousa's time. And I think we might want to cut away from this one, but yeah, there we go. They're going to filter back in position, but that is not the way they would have wanted their races to end. Or of course, it's not at a complete end yet, but it may as well be as we head down towards lap number 30. Claudio Diaz 4/10 ahead of Victor Vidler, who's desperately trying to make his way through and back into the slipstream. He's not quite been able to get close enough, has Vidler, but he's going to try and keep this one up. You can see what Diaz's strategy it is going to be backing these drivers up as much as he possibly can, open up the door for Iskrig, for Steg, for Gabadi to make their way through, and then he can really apply the pressure on the VNT driver rather than just the top 2 scrapping it out.
Yeah, he certainly can. It's look how slow Diaz goes through turn 5. He just turns into a snail, and look how much of the train is caught back up. It's now 11 cars in this train from Diaz all the way down to Goya, and as we make our way to turn 9, you could just see them all filing through on the camera shot, and we could see multiple changes of position in the next few laps with Diaz backing them up so much through that middle sector. I'm not sure why he does it. Potentially just breaks a little bit earlier than Vidler, and of course it then all has a chain reaction of everyone breaking earlier and earlier and earlier, so they all just really pincer up to the back of one another, and Vidler with another another opportunity now to potentially get this move done as we start lap 31 of 33. 3 more racing laps to go here in Barcelona. And will Victor Vidler go for the move once again this time around? No, just pulls out the slipstream. Doesn't seem close enough for the lunge. Is not close enough for the lunge. And I wouldn't be surprised here now, Joseph, if the Williams driver is just setting himself up for that final tour of the circuit.
He's certainly going to give it a go, I think, as while the outside line does beckon. He's actually welcomed into the move by Claudio Diaz, but decides not to go for the move. He stays in behind. Is he going to do the up and under? Once again, he pulls alongside. Once again, he backs out of the move. Vidler with late lunges, and it's Grieg getting lunged on by Wojtek Steg, and Steg getting very close to a spin there. Very close to contact with a Grieg as well, but doesn't, and there goes the spin. Abe Gabadi trying to shape to the inside line, and there is contact between the two. Steg has gone round with just a couple of laps to go in this first race. Very unfortunate for the Red Bull, but that's going to be the end of his competitive day. The inside line does beckon for Dennis Langrock, the latest driver, brought into this battle. Alex Santana and Damien Curiel side by side as well. We've not seen much of the Alpine man all day, but what we are seeing right now is more contact. Zalan Bieda trying to defend the position from Santana, and in the end it's cost his teammate Daniel Koya back through on Curiel. It's drama with 2 laps to go.
It certainly is. As we cross the line now, Diaz, of course, still got that race lead. Steg out of contention now, who's driven a superb race all evening long. And here comes Vidler now to the outside line through turn 1. Diaz breaks as late as he dares, forces the Williams car off the road, and Diaz is still going to hold on to the position as the Williams driver had to just slot back in behind the V car. We can't see if he's looking to the outside or the inside. It looked like to the outside goes Victor Vidler, but Diaz still just able to hold on, and is Grieg still going for the move potentially? As look at that, Vidler parks it in the middle of the road behind Diaz to make sure nobody could get a lunge against him. And for Claudio Diaz, he's a very lucky boy, but that turn 1 incident might come under review if Vidler can't get the move done into the first corner, because that was a bit aggressive, and he did force the Williams driver off the road.
Certainly did. It's very, very close as we get to this final lap, and Claudio Diaz is 4 tenths ahead of Victor Vidler. Ivan Skrieg has sort of been sucked into the fight with Abe Gabadi rather than fighting ahead, rather than fighting with the 2 drivers at the very top of the field. The penultimate time they'll head through the final couple of corners, and they will remain in formation. It's Diaz to Vidler, but he is close enough to maybe make a move into this first corner. 4 tenths back. He was 5 tenths back as they headed out of the final corner, but they remain very close, and it's going to be the outside for Vidler. Diaz is going to defend this one very, very late on the brakes. Diaz is just about going to try and squeeze Victor Vidler. They're both going to keep tyres on the track, and Diaz manages to defend. He's now pushed off round number 1 of attacks from Vidler. Round 2 will come right after this corner into the next braking zone of turn number 6. Is Vidler going to be able to get close enough to Diaz to make a move? He looks to the outside, but no, Diaz just cuts him off. Ivan Skrieg trying to find a way through as well, as Diaz is so slow through this segment of corners. Abe Gabadi as well trying to find his way onto the podium in the latter stages, but there is currently 2 Spanish drivers on this podium here in Barcelona. What a start of the season it will be for Claudio Diaz and for Ivan Skrieg to take that podium at their home race. Diaz has 1 more complex of corners to hold on to this position, and he doesn't look as though he's going to be pushing very quickly, very hard at all. He wants to break Victor Vidler's momentum. He doesn't want the Williams to get anywhere near close, and Claudio Diaz looks like he's going to come around the final corner and take the victory. Vidler gets a good run, but it will be Claudio Diaz. Se lleva la carrera uno en circunstancias dramáticas, and it will be Diaz to take that one home. Vidler making contact just after the line, but it will be Diaz who holds on. Ivan Skrieg to take 3rd place and to take it for the Spaniards, and Abe Gabadi just about in the end off of the podium. Dennis Langrock very close in there as well. Bieda, Santana and Curiel contact on the penultimate lap. So it's certainly drama here in race 1, but it will be Diaz on top.
It certainly is. Diaz on top. Spectacular stuff there from the Spaniard to win in his home race. But I think there might still be a steward review pending, just due to that incident that happened on the penultimate tour of the circuit between Vidler and Diaz down at the first couple of corners. But overall, that was a fantastic race driven by Claudio Diaz and also by everybody else in that train. It was one that came all the way down to the wire, but the Spaniards do come out on top in the end. But Joseph, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this season goes, because I feel like Spain as a circuit is a big outlier for some drivers. A lot of people aren't really too competitive, aren't really too strong around there. I'm not sure what it is about this circuit, but it can be a bit of a bogey track for some of the quick guys. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this season does go. But for Claudio Diaz, he takes the first blood of the season, and he will take the championship lead in the process as well.
Certainly will. What a victory that appears to potentially be for the driver, for the Spaniard at the top. It doesn't look like we're going to be getting the final the final standings here in this race, but that was a very, very good one to watch. And of course, we're not going to be getting the cameras. There we go. It's just popped up on my screen just as I cut away. It will be. I'll read out the final order then. As we will end this first race of the season. No, I won't, because it'll cut away again, and that'll be... that's just the way that the game goes, really, but that'll be it, I believe, for our first stream, unless we get anybody into the commentary box. I'm not sure whether we will. I don't think we'll be getting many of the drivers in this season to speak to us. They just don't seem to like us, do they, Max? But yeah, that'll be it. In fact, it won't be myself for the majority of the season. We will be having... Max alongside Corey Brooks, hopefully, who will hopefully be back for next week. But have we got any final words before we end off this stream, our first stream of season 42?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully, I want to quickly put this out that next week will be a lot better when it comes to the technical front. Yeah, just a few hiccups that, for some reason, decide to appear when we go live for the first time this season. But yeah, it was an interesting race. It was actually very, very entertaining as well. Of course, we didn't know who was going to win that one between Fiddler and Diaz, and even Iskrieg had a moment near the end as well to potentially capitalise on that slowing up from Claudio Diaz. So it was a very strong opening round to the season. Of course, the rest of the season is going to be as follows. We're going to head over to Baku next week, so that could be absolute chaos in the historic streets of Baku. Then we have Austria, then it's a break week, then it's Texas, Netherlands, Brazil, Singapore, Belgium, Abu Dhabi and Jeddah. So after that break week, it's straight through all the way to the end on the 23rd of April. A 10-round season. So not many opportunities here, Joseph, for these drivers to fight back in the championship battle. But through Spain and then into Baku next week, I think they're two circuits which, if people can get them right, like we saw Diaz today, it certainly could spell well for them for the rest of the season.
Certainly could. It certainly could indeed, as we've had a little bit of an interlude from the music as well, which has joined us for this part of it, of course, because we've had to patchwork things together. We have had Spain for the first round of the season. What a round it was. Azerbaijan, the next one, that'll be very interesting to see, especially Sector 2. Claudio Diaz could do similar antics in Sector 2, but Sector 1 and Sector 3 just don't get away with things like that. Austria will be round 3 of this season before we head to a break week early on. So we've got a 3-round push for the drivers at the start of this season, and of course they're going to be attacking them flat out because they know they will have that break week straight afterwards, so we'll be seeing some of the hardest work that we possibly could see. But it's 3 very different circuits, one balanced, one where straight line speed is king, one where cornering, despite the fact there's only 9 corners, is king. It's going to be very interesting to see the balance, and I think we'll be seeing a number of different drivers at the top because it just suits different characteristics.
It certainly does. I mean, you've got the likes of Singapore, a circuit we don't see often in the calendar. Of course, we had Netherlands last season, but we've got the Netherlands as well. That's a circuit that doesn't really get featured much in too many calendars. So there's a few circuits here this season which aren't really featured much, and if you're someone who really enjoys that track, has put a lot of hours into it, or at least a lot of laps compared to the rest of your field, you could be the one in the money and in that sweet spot here. So you've got to capitalise on those types of circuits. And of course, we're heading to Azerbaijan next. That's a circuit which isn't featured much either. I don't actually remember the last time it's featured here in PSGL, so it certainly could be a track where heading into next week we could have this field completely flipped just due to the nature of it. So yeah, Azerbaijan, Singapore and potentially the Netherlands could be some real outlier circuits, and they could make or break some championship chances.
It certainly could. Of course, with only 10 races in a season, the championship is short and sweet, and it's been a great start. It's been a great start for especially Claudio Diaz here in Spain. But as you say, stewards pending, but we are not in a place to comment on that one. This, I think, is where we're going to call it for this evening's action. But Max, have we got any final thoughts now that we've had a little look at the calendar, a little look at what's to come?
Yeah, just tune in next week. We should have a absolutely chaotic race in Azerbaijan. If this week was anything to go by, drivers going to be so close to the walls, and of course a circuit where not many leagues do their battles, so certainly could see a few safety cars as well. So make sure you tune in next week, and yeah, hopefully all the technical issues will be fixed as well, so we have a smooth stream throughout, touch wood.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And, well, we will see you next week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for tuning in. Not to tuning in, but thank you very much for tuning in. It's been myself, Joseph Black, alongside Max Ring. Of course, it was in the opposite order at the start of the stream, and hopefully it'll be Corey Brooks back next week. But until next time, it's goodbye.